I just pushed back on it for a long time, and I kind of just didn't want to go there. And I think there's seasons for that too, where you are just realize the willingness, like I'm just not quite willing yet. And so even just pray into that, like, where is my lack of willingness to Lord to be teachable? Like, where is that area, that question you asked initially, like, what's the one area you feel like the Lord is calling you to be more teachable in? That's a beautiful question.
You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christy Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home. Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. We are continuing our Words That Matter series with the word teachable today. Before we jump in, here is a word from our sponsors. Welcome back. Today we're talking about teachability as we continue our Words That Matter for families. We hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. We hope that you guys are in the middle of a wonderful holiday season as we are in that week between Christmas and New Year. And
this is like the time vortex. Like, nobody knows what day it is.
Right.
Nobody's moved out of pajamas. You feel like a lazy sloth, but you love that.
If you have off this week.
Well, maybe you don't. And then.
Right. Then you're working and we're.
Sorry, rubbing that in. Except, we all come back with a few extra fluffy.
Speak for yourself.
Fluffy pounds. I usually do. But anyway, it's a good week though.
I'm a little bit more. Well, I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that I'm more disciplined. I would just say maybe I am more disciplined. But
ouch.
I also have greater metabolism. Can we go that route?
Yeah. That's just the reality, actually.
We are talking about food and the new year and being teachable. All right, no, but truly though, we're entering a new year, and for some reason, I don't know why this is. It's like the new year calendar. It's like, oh, hey, we're gonna change up how we're doing life, and
we're gonna crush all the things.
We're gonna crush all the things, and I'm gonna remain teachable at this part of the year, but I'm not gonna be the rest of the part of the year. I feel like that's kind of what we end up doing, and it's like,
good call.
But because you're teachable right now, let us get you at a very teachable moment, and let's talk about being teachable in your family
and why it matters.
Because, by the way, the next couple of weeks, we are going to wrap up this Words That Matter series in the following 2 weeks, and we've got some really cool New Year words coming up for you that we're excited for you to have and press into. And that's why today's teachable. So you can't really implement this stuff unless you're teachable anyway. But if you're listening to this podcast, like, you're our family.
You're amazing.
You listen, like, you're teachable.
I just want to say,
I feel like we're saying teachable to people that are already teachable.
And it's like literally preaching to the choir.
I know.
It's so silly in some ways. There are times, I'll be totally honest, I really wrestle with what to say on this podcast, because those of you that have listened and have listened for a long time, like, some of you have been like loyal from the beginning. You are the and we meet you. Like, we meet you in real life.
Right.
We coach some of your families, your marriages, like, you women meet with me personally, men with Josh, like, every one of you that we have met and interacted with personally, like, you're exceptional humans. I just love who you are.
Tis true.
Is it funny to say, like, when we get someone who, like, comes through, like, who wants coaching or whatever, and who's not heard of us or who has not listened to the podcast, I'm always like, you might want to start there, because I feel like it gives a great foundation. And yeah, because there's just a different quality of person. And then the people are like, I've listened to your podcast for a while. I'm like, you're absolutely. Like, I would love to work with you. You're amazing. Because it speaks so much to your desire to grow in your heart. And anyway, you're just incredible humans.
And to be fair, there are people that we get, let me rewind.
Josh is going to correct my words.
To be fair, there are people that come into coaching because they have been recommended to us by somebody who listens to the podcast.
Yes.
And it doesn't make them a less quality person. They just haven't received the same level of information that those who do listen to the podcast have received.
And I'm not judging those people. I'm just saying sometimes they come in with it. It's like starting at ground zero, and they have no understanding of emotional intelligence, emotional safety, what that looks like. So,
and we give them a lot of grace.
Oh, 100%. I'm just saying, that's why my whole point was saying that what I'm saying on this podcast, I'm like, sometimes I don't know what to, it's like, I know
because
you already.
the people that are listening are incredible.
You've got this.
Exactly.
Like, you know this.
Right.
You're amazing. So it's the
Thanks
people
for
that
being teachable.
It's the people that aren't listening that probably.
It's the people that aren't teachable. I think that's the hard part. Is it?
Okay, let's go back to the word teachable.
But I do think it's what you're getting at.
Yes.
It's like it's a sense of teachability in humans that, and this is huge for me. And this is why we do coaching, is because I don't want to work with somebody who's not willing to be coached. And
you can't.
I can't do anything. Like there's nothing you can do. It's why we vet people. It's why we do discovery calls, that type of thing. And by the way, if you're looking for coaching or that type of thing, please check it out on the website. But we set up free discovery calls at the very beginning so that we can listen to the person's heart, their desires, their challenges, where they're stuck, and do they need counseling or coaching? Because that's a very important thing to discern. But then also, are they willing to get coaching? Are you really genuinely willing? And we talk about this in the book, in the Famous at Home book. We'll put that in the show notes today. By the way, it would have made a great Christmas present if you didn't do that. You could do it for next year, or even just give it a belated Christmas. Hey, I thought of you. You need to be famous at home. Because you're not now.
Yeah.
But like we talk about this sense of willingness. And the people that grow the most are the people who are willing and they're teachable.
Well, it truly, and there's sometimes it's like that. That'd be a waste of your money to work with us
100%.
Because I know you're not at a place where you're ready for it. Right. And so I don't want that for you. Like, I want you to be ready. I want you to experience like life transformation. And so my whole point was certainly not to criticize where some people are. Those of you that have listened to this podcast know about my whole season on the bottom rung of life. I was there. I know. And I have so much compassion and grace for those that are there. My point is saying, y'all are awesome.
I love it.
It's hard to say certain things, or it feels like I'm like using that phrase, preaching to the choir. Like, a lot of you don't need to hear this, but we are talking about teachability today because when I was a teenager, and I remember asking my mom, what was the one thing, the most important thing that she thought someone needed to, like a quality that they needed in order to choose a spouse. Like, so for me, looking for a husband, what is the like one most important thing that I should look for? And I thought for sure she'd be like, Josh Straub. That's what she said. No, she didn't. She said, I thought it was going to be like, their walk with God, their, I don't know, humility or something. She said teachability. And I remember being like stunned by that because I'm like, I don't honestly know that I've heard anyone use that word. But she said teachability. If you are teachable and you have a teachable heart and spirit, you can get through anything. Like that is a person you can walk through anything with because they're teachable. Pride, which I believe is the opposite of a teachable heart, and also a hardness of spirit. Stubbornness maybe is a good word. Just that sense of like
hard-headed.
Yeah, I know it, or I'm not changing, or I'm not even open to that is, I think, one of the most destructive things in a relationship.
It goes back to lack of EQ, which, by the way, we are open right now for the EQ coaching workshop for kids. This is one of our heart's desires, is helping the next generation be genuinely soft, have soft skills, have empathy, have respect, have emotion regulation, have cognitive flexibility, problem solving, social skills, self-control. All of these relate back to teachability. And that course is open. That workshop is open. Please jump in. Link is in the show notes. And
I with that, like, you will learn, like, there's so many of us just weren't given tools like that growing up because our parents didn't. They just didn't know. So they offered us what they had. But I think this is where concepts like teachability are so powerful because it's distilling down into like really simple terms what is a really deep character trait, I believe. Yeah. And it comes from like a lot of different things: humility, compassion, empathy, the ability to see into another's point of view. To be able to receive a teaching from someone, you have to respect them, show them honor, be humble enough to listen. You like the number of things that can kind of cover. And I think one word is beautiful, which is helpful for us as parents too, to be able to instill in kids, because I'm not saying like you have to be like my 100-word list of the things you need to be, because no one can measure up to that. But what if we say, let's work on a teachable heart, a teachable spirit. And I know for me, that has been really important in my homeschooling journey, because I am the one teaching them. And that is hard when they think they know it, or they don't want to hear mom teaching them. And we have one child in particular who is just far less teachable, or at least was. And I can say there has been like so much growth. I think because we have started to teach around this concept of teachability when they were younger. And I was like, if we can just get this one thing right, like this one thing, if you can at least be teachable, because if you're teachable, you can learn anything. If you're teachable, your capacity for growth is literally limitless. So it's like a growth mindset put in character form. Like, you're teachable and you are like fertile ground. You talk about like the seed and the sower, like where is the seed falling? It's falling in the fertile ground. And so anything that's planted can start to spring up. Now God's going to control how much that person can learn and express, I think, that thing, but that's okay. Not everyone has to be Mozart or an engineer, but they're growing, they're still teachable to learn those things, and they're not afraid.
Yeah, and I think too, this whole process of teachability in terms of our family is huge in your marriage too. Ooh, and we talk, a lot about parenting here. Let's talk about marriage, and let's jump into that. So right after the break, we're going to jump into teachability in marriage. So Christy, I think genuinely this starts with our marriage, because if we do not remain teachable in our relationship with one another, it's not gonna flow down into the relationship with the kids.
Like, I don't even. Yes.
So like one of the so
I don't know how to even
so a few weeks ago we were talking, and we were actually on the podcast. You would have heard it. There was a moment where I was like, oh, we should do teachability, because that would be a great word. Teachability was not in this original list that we had prayed through and looked at.
Yeah.
The word calm was going to be used today. And I think calm can be summed up in simplicity. You can go back and listen to the episode on simplicity. And calm can be mentioned in seen in safety and attunement. And I think in faith, I think you see that the types of words that we're using lead to a calmer life. So the reason that we dialed back and went with teachability is because I think in order to be teachable, you have to remain calm, and teachability breeds calmness, and calmness breeds teachability.
Yeah.
And I have to be calm whenever Christy is criticizing me about something and trying to help me grow, but I don't want to hear it. My ability to be teachable is proportionate to my ability to be calm and to hear. I have to. If I am not teachable in what she's trying to, because she knows me better than anybody else on this planet, and she therefore knows, and there are times she gets it wrong, but it's rare that she would ever be misjudging something. And if she misjudged something within a motive or an attitude that I was having, it was because of a previous experience that she had with me, where she was assuming that previous experience was happening in the moment. And so it was still something that I had dealt with or struggled with at some point. And so I think there are times where I'm like, wait a minute, that is off. Yes, that was a previous me. That's not me now. Please understand that. Mm-hmm. But overall, she knows me better than anybody else. And so my ears should be perked up. James 1:19 and 20, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, because human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. Listen to that. Human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. My ability to be quick to listen to anything that she's coaching me on or stressing in my life is critical to the flow, the ebb and flow of the rest of our home, and how my kids pick up on teachability. Because if they're not seeing me being teachable with her, forget it.
Okay, am I going to drop a bomb, okay? I'm not saying this to be judgmental. I'm just saying this based on our work with couples and in marriages. those couples that struggle with fighting, like very argumentative relationships, are typically fairly low in teachability. And it is because there is this combative sense of like, I have to, like, I won't give in. I won't give in. And so one of the things that we teach, we just did a 6-week series with our church. We do this with every coaching couple, is to see the grain of truth in the other person's criticism, or if it's their point of view, if you're in an argument, but to give in to that grain of truth. Because when you can do that, that is what I would consider the very first steps of teachability, where you can say, you know what? You're right. When you said that, I see how that is true, or I see your point there, or even if you totally disagree, I can see how you would feel that way. Because you can put yourself in the other person's shoes. That ability to, I always call it to drop down. Like if you can just drop a little bit in any type of heated disagreement, argument, you are going to, like, you will transform the way you and your spouse communicate, but B, like, you will not get into these explosive arguments because you're diffusing. That's why I said I was dropping a bomb, but you're literally. I was
going to pick one of these buttons, but I don't know which one does an actual like.
Nice. If we were like super fancy, like.
I'll just have to label those things.
Podcasters, we might know.
I'll just label those.
We do have a fancy like system now, but we just don't know how to use it. That was not it.
That's just a good laugh.
Oh, wow. It just keeps going.
That's definitely not it. Wow.
Okay.
I've struck out.
We'll work on it later.
There you go.
Ba-doom-ching.
There's your bomb.
That's like a, I'm hilarious.
But
now I've lost my train of thought. But
it goes back to willingness. Are we willing to grow? And there are times that I think if you have a check in your spirit about something that your spouse has brought to you and you want to get defensive, like I know for me, there's a lot of times that Christy might bring something to me, and I know this happens to her too. Like I'll bring her stuff and I know when she's ready to hear it and when she's not. And I have to be very discerning about when I'm bringing it up with her and how I'm bringing up with her, my tone of voice, all those types of things.
And all those things help. Again, it's giving into that.
And there's times where I'm telling you, I can be the softest, most gentle, genuine person and bring it up with her, and she's just not ready to hear it, and it just drops like a bomb, like a literal, like it's like, I'm like, geez Louise. But the same thing is true with me too. Let me flip that. Like she's looking at me. If you're listening to this audio, she's looking at me like, wow, really? But you've gotten so much better with this, Lovey.
Thank you.
You are so much more teachable than you used to be.
Thank you.
But I think
you
it's great,
made that sound real sarcastic, but I do hope.
It is very true. And the reason I say this is because I just want you all to hear, we're not always like, oh, sweetie, thank you for telling me about my flaws.
Oh my gosh.
I am so grateful that you pointed out that I've been a real jerk lately and my tone of voice and how catastrophic my language has been. And I will make sure that I honor you in everything that I do and my words,
that makes me want to,
the words that come out of my mouth are light and life. And like, please understand, that is not our world. So teachability sometimes
even like
is
coaching clients will sometimes be like, do you guys not struggle with this? And we're like,
but like,
so then we'll like, here's an example. Here's another example. Because again, we're not none of us are like these polished images. We're not getting this right. We're growing in teachability. And the realization that is something that you want to grow in is, I think, the main point of this entire podcast.
Right.
Grow in teachability. I think so often this cold, hard, untender adult professional world is teaching you to be all of those things, which is the opposite of tender and humble and teachable. And so we are saying that the goal is the opposite of what you see shining out in the world, and that teachability is actually one of the most beautiful characteristics I think that you can grow in a person, both the little ones you're raising and in the relationship with your spouse.
Well, and I think too, the other component of this is, you know, in the nature of all of this thing is with your kids, their ability to be teachable. I lost my train of thought. Hold on one second. My train of thought was going into a direction of, what was I going into?
Can I finish what I was, can I say
Finish what
something?
you're going to say, because I'm going to go.
It
Had to do with our kids.
I just think so often, even in the world of faith and in the realm of the church, like we have prized people who are able to debate, who are very assertive in their belief, that are like, you know, conviction, as if this is like, and that is, again, a beautiful thing. But let's keep in mind this underlying and undergirding beauty of teachability, that you can see the grain of truth in what someone is saying and receive that and not be offended. Like, comes back to that whole, like, be unoffendable, which I think is an equally, you know, noble pursuit. I think that's really hard to do realistically, but we can be really teachable.
Yeah. And I think, so the point that I was going to make is, you know, so often as parents, we're told not to apologize to our kids, or or don't show weakness in front of your kids, right? It's like, or we were raised that way, or we didn't see our parents apologize to us. And I think for us to model this for our kids is our ability, not our kids' ability, but our ability to be able to enter into our kids' world and apologize for when we've messed up, to apologize for when we've made a mistake, we've said something wrong. You know, John Gottman found, if you listen to the podcast, you've heard me say this multiple times. It's in our book, Famous at Home, but it's like, when you apologize, John Gottman found that, you know, if you get emotion coaching or this emotional safety thing right just 2 out of 5 times, you can still get the outcomes you desire in your kids. Yeah. And the reason is because of a word called repair. He calls it the ultimate of relationships. So in other words, you're going to mess up. You're going to say things you regret 3 out of 5 times. Like, you're going to mostly mess up. The whole point is that when you do, you enter into your kid's world and you apologize for your specific offense. What you're doing is you're showing your kids that you're not perfect. You're showing them you don't expect them to be, but you're also modeling for them how to make it right. And I think so often we end up with this sense of pride that, oh, I don't want to apologize to my kids. I think it's forgiveness is the ultimate of relationships. Jesus taught us to do it 70 times 7. He taught us to do it and because it's been done for us. Yeah. Like, it's been done for us. Why not invite our kids into that space? And so to Christy's point, like, we've got to be able to be modeling this both in our relationship with our spouse, in our relationship with our kids. And teachability is not something that might happen right away. It's not like I'm receiving this right away from Christy. And I hope that I'm getting better and better and better, just like she's gotten better and better and better and better, that it's an ongoing journey. But there might be a time where I'm like, oh, I need to process that first because this has triggered something in me. Take that to Jesus. Take that very thing that you are not wanting to be teachable about in that moment and go spend some time with the Lord and ask yourself, be curious and be curious and ask yourself, what is it that is causing this to rise up within me right now? Why is this rising up within me? Why am I defensive? What is it about what he or she said to me that is putting me on edge? Because it speaks more about where you're at. Your reaction is speaking about more where you're at than maybe even the criticism of the person to begin with. And so to me, when I do that, that's when I come back around to Christy in a sense of much more calm and peaceful way and teachable and go, I really see what you're saying. I see a part of what you're saying, or giving into a grain of truth in the criticism, and just simply entering into that and then listening well, being quick to listen rather than quick to speak.
And teachability also moves into, it's not just like with criticism in a relationship. It also goes into the ability and the desire to grow and learn. So as opposed to fearing new things or something that's outside your comfort zone, it's that belief that like my growth is more important than my accomplishment or my success or my, doing this thing well. Like I'm okay being a learner, and I'm okay learning, and it's going to look messy. And I think that, some people call that growth mindset, having a growth mindset. And that is a beautiful teaching. We teach that in our EQ curriculum. It is powerful because it gives kids the freedom to try without this, which is where I think so much of our our just systematic anxiety in school system and just in education has come up. Is like, they're terrified to fail. Like, they have to ace a test. Today, I had 2 kids taking tests, and One was in tears because she didn't get 100%. The other one was studying for a test that it's actually going to be tomorrow, and was like so afraid of having to take this test. And I'm like, where does this come from? Like this, like I have to get 100%. And I was like, guys, if we're getting 100% on every test, it tells me they're not hard enough. If you know perfectly 72 questions, tells me like this is beneath you.
You're not being challenged.
You're not growing. And I think there obviously support challenge, there's a continuum there where we have to be careful to not over challenge them, but that they do feel a sense of mastery, that they're doing, well at some places, but that they're okay to be a learner too. And they can try harder and harder things because growth is the goal, not perfection. And I say that to also encourage this teachability concept in every area of our lives. That, I mean, for me, cooking, different hobbies, those are things that like in other seasons of my life, I'm like, that's just not me. Like, I'm out. Like, I don't desire to learn. And now I'm like, no, I actually want to learn how to can. I've never done it before, but I think that would be, I might blow up the kitchen, but I'm willing to try. And I think it might be kind of fun. And that teachable spirit is, I think, what causes that curiosity and just willingness to learn. That's how we don't age.
The teachability for me is blowing up the kitchen could be fun, but it would take me a while to see that it was actually fun blowing up the kitchen. So
it's just with a pressure canner.
I know, understand that.
Like
it was one of those things. You're like, blowing up the kitchen could actually be fun. And I was like, well, maybe not initially, but maybe later I'd look back on it in hindsight and kind of laugh that it was funny.
Like, I'm going worst case scenario.
Yeah.
This is why I would be like, I'm not doing it. The reality of that happening, I mean,
not very,
maybe it does. I don't know.
Very, very slim. Here's where and you brought up a fantastic point, and I think it needs to be emphasized. What is the area of your life right now you need to grow, be more teachable? So for us,
Boom.
For me, money was a big one, and I think we have really, really gotten this past year. Money has been one. So if you're doing like a new year, kind of like a year-end review, where in your life do you need to have you not been teachable that you need to be more teachable? I think this past year we've gotten really, really good at kind of asking, but just doing it out there. I think too, we've gotten really, really good. Christy especially has led the way in this for us and our family, learning finances and learning a new system for doing it. And we recommend the Money and Marriage episode with Bob and Linda Lodich to kind of see how that influenced us. We've learned a lot as it relates to minimalism and living a more minimalist life and getting rid of things that just are creating emotional space. Physical health, how we eat. We've changed our diet more this year. At least I have changed my diet more this year than I have at any other point in my life. I think that's been a huge component of it. So is it your physical life, your financial life, your cooking, your hobbies, as Christy said? What are the areas of your life that you feel stuck in your family? I think vacationing is another one. How well is your family vacationing? How are you planning for it? How are you planning for date nights with your spouse? How are you planning for date nights with your kids? How are you planning for, your weekly rhythms and your values as a family? What are the ways that you could grow? I want to tell you and encourage you, the Famous at Home book would be a great New Year start if you're looking for setting new rhythms and new values and just even shifting some of the ways that you are doing family life and you want to be more teachable. That would be a great place to get started. And we'll obviously put the book in the show notes for you today. But think about that area of life. I think it's good that you look back on what was good in your life this year. Where did you guys really grow? And then look at what's the one area that maybe we want to grow in 2023. What is the one new area that we could be more teachable at?
Yeah, I think mine was health because I had to change my diet, 7 years ago, I guess. And after I had Kennedy and I, gluten-free, dairy-free, I had to do all this stuff. And I just felt like I'd sacrificed everything. And yet I was still not major things, but my skin was just acting crazy out of nowhere. And so I've been working with this root cause practitioner and she's been wonderful. But I'll be honest, there's a lot of things I didn't want to do because I'm I've already done so much stuff. I've already given up so much stuff. I just want to feel normal. But being teachable to be okay, I'm going to hear you and I'm going to do these things, even though I'm honestly kind of not wanting to do, but I'm going to be teachable because you know what you're talking about. And this is an area that, I think this is you're getting to deeper things. So that was for me. We were talking about teachability. I realized like I just pushed back on it for a long time, and I kind of just didn't want to go there. And I think there's seasons for that too, where you are just realize the willingness, like I'm just not quite willing yet. And so just pray into that. Like, where is my lack of willingness to Lord to be teachable? Like, where is that area, that question you asked initially? Like, what's the one area you feel like the Lord is calling you to be more teachable in? That's a beautiful question, because that'll highlight places that it's a letting go. And I think all of us at our core, if we sat long enough and dug deep enough, we'd realize ultimately that's what we want. We don't want to be holding on so tight to all these things. We're doing it because it's out of self-protection, and it's the thing that we don't even realize. We've learned somewhere along the way keeps us safer. And ultimately, the Lord is our protection. He's our rear guard. He goes before us. And so if he's asking us, like, let go, I'm trying to ask you to grow in this, but you have to let go before you do. Just to pay attention to that. And I think you'll see incredible growth in that place.
For me, one of the biggest questions is how my inability to be teachable. How has my inability to be teachable hurt my family or held my family back?
Or held you back.
And I think that's the thing that I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to, because I want to be honest about that, especially in the new year. Where can I be more teachable, and how can I grow? Because it's gonna help us all grow. So don't forget about leaving us a review. Reviews tell people about the podcast, the book, other places, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review, because it is how other people know whether or not to engage with us or not. And
I don't know if I've ever asked, but if you have been a person, you've listened to the podcast for a while and you're just like, you've never left a review, would you leave one from us to you? It is something that we've not been great at asking for.
We really haven't.
We don't really ask a lot, but it really would mean a lot.
Trying to get better at asking things. Yeah.
But if you could just say what your experience has been, it is really helpful. We understand the metric, but also just we're teachable. The feedback is beautiful as well.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
We will see you next week.
Happy Teachable New Year.
And keep in mind, until next year, the greatest red carpet you will walk is through your front door.
Keep being famous at home. I love you.